Well, hello and welcome to the Play Healing podcast with me, your host, Debi John. And today I have the wonderful Jane Tarrant on my podcast talking all things play, all things breathing, all things working as a businesswoman and a busy mother and lover. And well, we'll see where it all goes. But as I love to do at the start, it's lovely to see you. Hi, Jane. All
Hello.
right. Hello, hello. It's lovely to see you. I would love to start off by finding out something about you as a child and how you used to love playing as a child. Does anything come to mind when I ask you that question?
So it's actually quite interesting because I watch my daughter and I almost remember what I did because I see what she does. And so it's really brought things back. Like I used to string up washing on a little line between two chairs. I used to love sort of not so much cleaning, but more like sort of chores, anything that I saw my mum do. And I think it really comes back now to me about what you see is what you mimic. And
Mm,
I didn't have a huge amount of like my mum sitting down and playing with me because she was also helping run a business with my dad and also and parenting for two kids. So it was kind of one of those ones where I didn't get that. But then off on the other side, I was quite creative because my granny did spend time with me being creative with paints and things like that. And so I really enjoyed the two sides. One is just real life, and the other side is sort of the creativity side. But I never I really remember like playing with like a little post office and
mm.
counting the money, and I play with little cuddly toys, and they'd sort of talk to each other and stuff. But at some point, that became harder to do. So I now find it much
Mm.
harder to approach the sort of
Role
imaginative play.
play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it much harder now than I probably did back then. But in the same time, I played a lot by myself quite happily, and I could be bored for hours, yet never really bored because there was always something that I would come to.
Yeah. It's really lovely reflecting on that period of your life where you didn't have as many inhibitions and you didn't have as much responsibility as you do now when you're an adult. And that beautiful carefreeness and being in your own little world. Um, it's a really lovely thing to watch as well. It's lovely to hear that you're watching your daughter, you're just observing, you're just seeing these patterns coming through, and the fact that you got to do art as well and just express yourself in that way. Were you like sporty at all? Because I know now you love climbing and is it fitness? What kind of
Yeah.
fitness are you into at the moment?
So at the moment, climbing is my main thing that I try and do more as a family. And I'm not actually as sporty or as fit as I'd like to be. That's a kind of goal for this year to really focus more on my body and strength, ready for perimenopause years, etc. And for my future as much as just not so much for a body type, but actually just for how I feel. And what I'm also kind of looking at the moment is trying to bring things in a bit more fun. So I have a friend, Wendy, who runs Reclaim Movement. So she talks about like natural movement within the day. And I
Yeah,
love that. So
that's
I do try and actually bring that in more than anything, like when I'm going up the stairs or, unloading the dishwasher or doing the washing, I think about how I can make that more playful to get more movement in as well, which I've really enjoyed. So that's been a bit of a change, thinking more about movement rather than exercise or sport. But back in the day, before about 15, I was actually really, really sporty
no
in all the
way.
teams and stuff. And I loved it, but it was more of a social thing. And I think I feel like more isolated now as
Yeah.
somebody who can't go out in the evenings easily because I'm child caring.
Mm.
So I feel I miss out a bit on the social element of
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah, sport definitely, that kind of play has that social element a lot of the time. But I
Mm.
love that thing about sort of reclaiming movement. And it reminds me of the Atomic Habits book about sort of attaching things to every day, things that you're naturally doing and routines that you've got established already. What an amazing idea. And that kind of also links in with this breathing training you're talking about and that you train people with, doesn't it? Isn't it? Because we are breathing all the time. And I've had the privilege of listening to you speak and going on your amazing workshop and webinar. And what drew me to you in particular, because I know lots of people who do breathing training, was your play fueled approach. I use play fueled instead of playful because it's fueled by this sense of curiosity and play and abandonment. You know, the things you post on LinkedIn, I'm like, you are so brave to say that. Like, I don't know if I can say that right now. And I mean, I think that I talk about it to my mates, but to post things about orgasms and stuff like that on LinkedIn, I'm like, respect, you're streets ahead of me as far as confidence. But like, but this is life. Like, this is life. We're doing life, and courage and vulnerability go together. I talk about that so much, but this play-filled approach really drew me to you. So tell listeners who've never come across you before, kind of what your passion is and what you do at the moment.
So I'm always talking about breathing habits. It's literally the thing you just can't shut me up about. And it doesn't matter where I am or who I'm talking to, it generally goes in that direction for at least a moment, if not longer. But I basically teach people about healthy breathing habits and why it is important how we breathe. And I'm really on a mission to lead global education on healthy breathing habits and breathing retraining, but in a simple, accessible way. And I think that's the real key, because a lot of
Yes.
people know so much more than me in this field and could tell you the science from left to right and, put it in graphs and all that. But that doesn't help people get involved and learn. And what I wanted was to say, how can we get this to the general public, to whether you're super intelligent or maybe not so much, and you just need it very simple, because all of us are busy. Even if we're
Yeah.
super intelligent, we still haven't got time to take new concepts in very, very detailed ways. So just trying to make it fun. And I have people following me, and obviously I talk about breathing all the time, and yet people still read my posts because they never quite know what it's going to be about. As you said, it could be about orgasms or nipple hair or, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I go for the shock element for a bit of fun. Sometimes I just like that I can share something
Yeah.
that most people wouldn't bother, or to bring a little bit of a personal story in. I think it's really nice. So to be able to feel that I can is lovely. I'm not worrying about getting fired from a job. I'm not really worrying about what people
Yeah.
think. I
Yeah.
did have somebody comment on the orgasm one, somebody who sort of is in my life, and they were like, I'm not sure that's and I was like, well, I'm okay that I did it, and you're not
Absolutely.
really the person I'm talking to anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
not too bothered whether you find it comfortable or not.
Mate, I'm like, you're so my woman. I'm like, permission to play your way, and this is the way you're playing, right? This is
Yeah,
the way in play and sales and marketing, and you are this brand. Whether we like it or not, we're putting stuff into the world, and people are judging us for it, aren't they? And making their judgments, and it's how we connect with our audience, I guess. And
yeah,
you bring that, and your t-shirt is another play-field example of keeping things really simple.
like this one.
That's yes, 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 yes. Because it's like totally, I'm totally with you on this. Because if you complicate things, people don't really listen, or they can't actually own it and work it into their own lives. It has to be simple and achievable and memorable. So tell me about the tree and the lung thing that you used, because that was amazing. You did that in your TED talk as well, didn't you?
Absolutely. So I the reason I have this is because I wrote this book, Rose Loses Her Nose. And if you
Mhm.
can see the little white t-shirt here, she's actually wearing the same
Oh,
sign on here.
beautiful.
So it's
Yeah.
actually part of the story of how she teaches the other children, because she was bought it to help her remember how to breathe properly in the story. So that's where it came from. And I had it designed by Carolina Banza for the book, but something that I can then use however I want. And then these t-shirts are actually now for sale, so that people can buy them as a kind of way to help learn. But also, I just like to wear them because they help me to educate visually. So, I can explain about being at the top of the lungs only with only a few leaves, or deep into the lungs with the full canopy. And you can see
Mm,
visually how much more efficient it would be to breathe into the bottom rather than into just a few leaves at the top, where all of this is dead
yes.
space in the trunk and branches. So it's really important. And then it allows for this little sunshine here, which I call the D spot. So we can explain about where you should feel the movement, how it should feel, rather than just being like, belly breathe or imagine a balloon in your stomach, which actually isn't very helpful if you're trying to breathe correctly,
Yeah.
because you can misinterpret it so easily. So I wanted to make it
Mm,
super fun, but really specific as well. And this is how I
Mm.
decided to do that.
So good. And how amazing to target schools and younger families, or teach the parents to be able to share it with their children, because that's how we bring about lasting change, isn't it? Because we know that earlier these children are learning things. I've taught reception all the way up to teaching 18-year-olds, and seen it time and time again, the power of education. And I remember my reception class and getting them all to lie down and put teddies on their tummies and try to encourage them to breathe deeply and have some moment of like calm and quiet. But really, it's not that you're doing. You're not just getting people to lie down, chill out, and breathe for a second. We're talking about day in, day out. How are you breathing when you sleep? How are you breathing when you exercise? How are you breathing when you're talking? So can you give us some examples of why these things are so important, or maybe some stories about how you've helped people and how their lives have actually changed? Because we're talking about, well, you and I feel like we're talking about changing the world for good, right? And so take the floor. I'll let you, otherwise I'll throw 1,000 questions at you if I don't shut up. So
Love it. So I mean, first of all, I'll start with my story because,
yeah,
I am that child who didn't have, for example, this book or any education when I was young
yeah.
about breathing. And so a lot of this passion comes from what I know to be true, and to have felt it. And then also,
Mm,
obviously, I get to hear the stories of others, which just mimic many parts of mine, as well as having their own. So first of all, I was 7, playing in my room on my own, somewhere between, the post office or the little doggies. I don't know what I was playing with that day. And I just was sitting there in a moment of pause. And I was just noticing my breathing. And I was noticing that my nose felt, I could breathe through it, but it felt a bit small, a bit sort of insufficient. And I was like, I mean, I can breathe through it, but my mouth just feels easier. So, surely if that was a problem, someone would have told me. And I think this surely if that was a problem, someone would have told me element is really the bit that sticks with me now, because no one does tell us. And it's not our doctors, our teachers, our
no.
dentists, our orthodontists, our parents. No one is actually educating children that how we breathe matters. And whilst I'm delighted to see meditation and mindfulness and things coming into schools,
Mm,
um, what we're not doing is actually teaching parents or teachers that if they are breathing through their mouth, their tongue will be dropping out of position, and that will be negatively impacting the development of their face, their smile, and their
mm,
airways. And
mm,
that's what I've experienced. I have much longer face,
mm,
very narrow, almost triangular upper palate.
mm,
I had very crooked teeth, which are now still going crooked again after having braces because of how I
mm,
continue to breathe and swallow. And then it makes everything go up into the nasal cavity to make that smaller, and the whole airway gets
mm,
smaller. You see a lot
mm,
more of this forward head posture, etc. So
mm.
if we look at kids, I am passionate about getting to kids, but I didn't actually want to start through schools because there's no
No,
funding. There's
nope.
no
Do you know
money
what? It's
to educate.
interesting. Same as we've both gone to corporates and businesses. I totally agree. It's so sad though, isn't it? It's sad that
It's
we
really
this is
sad.
this is the state of play.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I wanted to go, how can I get this to kids and parents? And how can
Mm,
I make that relevant? And actually, how can I educate parents through their children? Because actually, great things in school would be going, oh, maybe we could, bring a DVD or something into school. But the parents never see it. So when the child comes home saying,
exactly.
did you know that I need to put my tongue in this position at the top of my mouth and it helps make me nose breathe and it'll give me a better smile? They'll be like, what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we're not actually bringing it into the whole family. And I think when we do things together, and especially if it's a playful nature, we learn better and we start to copy. So what I wanted was to give a resource that someone like myself who goes, actually, I want to, secretly educate my brother because he's not going to listen to me because I have a sister. But, I'm going to give it to his kids, and then, he can read it
He
with them
has
and
to
he'll
read it.
he'll learn. Yeah. And that was kind of, there's many people in the world that know that breathing is important. They might not know all the specifics that I teach, but they know it's important, and they needed a way to kind of of have a bit of fun. And that's why I went down the storyline route, is to try and get this in there. But from a point of why it's important, that structure is the first and fundamental
Mm,
issue. If we're
mm,
not breathing well as a child, we are then not
mm,
forming as optimally as we could do for our genetics.
mm,
And things like chewing and breastfeeding are also very good for strengthening. But
mhm,
we haven't always managed everything, so we've got to do the best we can with what we've got. And then it's a case of, well, what's the next bit? So if you think about how we sit and things like that, if you're
mm,
playing and you're moving, you're much more likely to be using your diaphragm better. If
mm,
you're sort of thinking about, well, I'm more going to do video games or slouch at my computer, you're likely to sort of push your bum forward, slouch your back into a C shape, and then your, what I call the D spot, so this little spot on the front just
it's gets
below the split of the
squashed.
ribs where it's squidgy, that
Yeah,
will get squashed and that
yeah,
won't be able to move how it should do. So
mhm,
your diaphragm is no longer kind of working properly, and then
mm,
it's restricted. And that can happen ever since people start to sit down age 5 at school.
mm,
And so
absolutely.
this
Mm,
is what we see. We see deterioration in kids starting tiny, tiny bit, and they could still be active until about 18. They might still be quite active or not. They could be like always, always sitting and not kind of interacting and playing. So we're starting to see this change. And then adults, obviously, how do we sit? Slumpy sofas,
mhm,
laptops at all the wrong angle and height,
mm,
coffee shops, which is quite trendy to work in a coffee shop, but I just feel horrible if I work at the wrong height and things on a laptop. So trying to bring in ways that we can kind of be aware of what's happening, but also
mm,
then bring a little bit of movement and play and change into the day as
mm,
well. So it's a really hard space to educate in, because most people have never even considered how they breathe to be important, let alone what's impacting it and then how to retrain it. So it's quite a big piece I'm biting off here.
It is. And I think we've had conversations in the past about the fact that I'm come from a music background. So I've had that so-called breathing training from becoming a singer. So I remember studying with these incredible tutors, and they are very insightful, and they can, they obviously go on about posture and not sort of squashing that diaphragm and all that kind of thing. However, you go from a singing performance, or you would go as when you sing, you take on this posture and you breathe in a certain way or whatever. And a lot of the time you have to mouth breathe depending on the phrasing and stuff, and then you go back to whatever you've been doing before, and often that isn't breathing in a healthy way. And even just if the musical community took this further and kept and really sort of trained, and obviously with the younger ones and sportsmen as well. I mean, you were at the running centre, that running convention recently. You and I do a bit of running. You do obviously a lot more than I do.
No, I
I've been
don't. I'm really
trying
not a
to.
runner. Not a
I
runner,
hate
no.
running, but
No, I'm
I'm
not a runner.
started. But you and I, to people say to you, "Oh, you look like a runner." They've got their running physique for long distance, and I was like, I just like sprinting, mate, or high jump, long jump. That was like, but
I
it
run
just
to
feels
get
a bit
places. In
like,
fact, as a kid, I used to run everywhere
did
just
you?
for fun, like from A to B. Why would you walk? Why?
Well,
I even do it sometimes now. Like if I'm somewhere that no one can see me and I'm like, I don't know, in a corridor of like a not big office or something, why wouldn't I run down this corridor? And I do it less and less now because I have less opportunities, but I love it, just a secret
oh,
run.
nice. I, d- I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm just moving in general is so good for us, and we are in such a sedentary position. Let's think about the listeners on here who are working from home perhaps, and having quite a sedentary lifestyle. How we are sitting does make a massive difference, doesn't it? Are there any other kind of quick tips that you'd like to offer up that somebody working from home could make sure they're doing?
So I would actually say that one of the most interesting things we can do is to, play on somewhere like, like the stairs, where you're not being unsafe, but you're using creativity if you're going up and down a particular space. So rather than just walking because it's a bit dull,
Mm,
some of my clients will be using sort of breath control on the stairs to help them sort
mm,
of train the tolerance. But give you an idea of how it can be really useful is, if you are somebody who feels breathless on the stairs or worried, maybe you're asthmatic or something like that, actually creating fun can make a huge difference. I had one client who came to my house, and we actually worked on it because they would be terrified of actually walking up the
Mm.
staircase. And so I said, okay, we're gonna race up. We're going to race up on our hands and feet, and we're going to, and we went all the way to the top, and she didn't need to stop once.
Wow. Isn't
And
that
she was like,
interesting? The
oh,
power of play. The
and
power
so
of play.
the play element is so important when it comes to trying to break into something that someone's got a huge element. So if, for example, somebody starts with me, I try and teach people, we use post-its, for example, for one of the exercises.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's silly, but just the fact they've gone around and put all these post-it notes up, and then they're sort of noticing it, and then they're all like, oh, look at me. And, it's kind of like people respond in slightly different ways, but the amount of people that just say, it was just really fun working with you. It was either fun in the fact that how they approach the thing, because it's like,
Yeah.
play with your body, see what happens, give it a go. There's no trying to be a perfectionist. And I have to kind of help people let go of trying to get it right. I'm like, just do this and see what happens and enjoy the process. And then the other side is, actually, where can you just take it a little bit less seriously? Where can we have a bit of fun? And I was on a call to someone the other day, and they were just like, they said, oh, getting up, and they're like, oh, lucky I wore pants today. And I'm like, oh, great. I mean, which pants are we talking about? The American or the English ones? Because that could mean totally different context. He was like, oh, the American ones. And then later I stood up, and about half an hour later, I was like, I'm wearing pants too. And it's just
It
having
makes people
fun.
relax. Like when you're doing a talk, right?
It's
It's
exactly that.
great to start with some humor because it makes people go, "Oh, it's
Exactly.
okay.
And so
She's
if we can
listening."
find ways in our day to bring some humor in, whether it's
Hmm.
remembering something funny you heard and trying it, or whether it's, watching a TEDx talk with some funny bits in it, or whatever it is,
Mm.
it can be really helpful, I think, just to bring a bit of that in. And or, if you're going to go through the house to take something, can you carry something but walking like a crab?
Yeah,
you know
brilliant.
can
Yeah,
you just be, no one's there, no one's judging you, can you just create a bit of silliness where you might feel silly, but actually you can also laugh at yourself, and it brings a really nice aspect into the day. And that's sometimes that I do just odd things that make no sense other than the fact that I just found them fun.
brilliant. That's amazing. Yeah, there doesn't always have to be an end result, does there? It's just doing it playing for playing's sake.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're a mum, aren't you? And we were talking about that at the beginning. What have you learnt from parenting? Running a really um, thriving business that's very time consuming and juggling parenting and juggling maintaining a relationship. How do you pause and play and build connection with your child, with yourself, and with your partner?
I've got to say, in all honesty, I find it really hard. I find it really, really hard. And although I can play, I'm not always in the mood, and I sort of have to make myself do something sometimes. And other times it's just natural, and I sort of go with my menstrual cycle. So if I'm, you know, after my period and before sort of ovulation, I'm much more naturally playful. So I kind of enjoy that. And if I'm at another time, I might be like, more sort of practical, for example. But
Mm,
when it comes to my child, I notice where I am in that cycle, and I just have self-compassion of where I am, first of all, because if I'm
lovely.
not in a playful mood, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just, you know, do what you can to make her feel loved, to feel like you're interested, or to be like, you know what, today's just not going to be the day for me. Today is going to be cartoons for a bit longer than normal.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
this has been really important to me, to not try to have to push myself where I start to resent or feel awkward. And sometimes she'll ask me to play with her, and I'll play with her for a little bit, and then I'll get really bored really quick. Like 2 minutes in, I'm like, you know what, I'm just not finding this possible to engage, and I'll change it. But then if she struggles with that, it's a case of, actually sometimes I find it easier just to be like, oh my God, what was that? And I can change the play to a different one. I can't maybe do what she
Mm,
wanted to do, but I can pretend there's a wolf around the corner, or something that I can do, because I just do the first thing and then she runs the rest of the game.
yeah. Yeah.
And so
It's
it's less effort on my part, but I sort of can get her stimulated in that way. And I found that really interesting to try. And then also trying to play with switching her emotions. So I read an incredible book called Hunt, Gather, Parent, and it's a very different type of parenting book, because it's not about Western parenting at all. It's much more sort of historic tribes and things like that, and how they can keep children more calm, and how you can actually sort of manipulate their emotions, so taking them from sort of like anger to awe. So if she gets really frustrated at something, I'll just be like, oh my god, like how incredible that rainbow is, or whatever it is I can see, and I can just flip her. And I enjoyed that, because then it creates almost a game out of doing this, and
Hmm.
trying to think about how can I keep calm, but then also bring in these positive emotions, and even just like pretending to be something scary. She just starts giggling, and then I feel better because she does. And whereas if I upset her, it can be a
Mm.
really big spiral, and I struggle even more. So that's been my biggest challenge, is getting to that point where I can try to use these small things that I know work. And it is an effort sometimes, but it's also lovely. And then other days I'm just totally the best mum ever. And I really enjoy, being able to hang with her. And like I got her a garden playhouse, and I sort of went all the way up in a Luton van and picked it up and drove it all back on my own, and that felt like a bit of an adventure on its own. And then I decorated it all, and then I just, for the first week and a half, I think I ate dinner in there every night while she sort of played house, and it was lovely. But things can get tiring, and I do like to have it new. I like to kind of create new games rather than repeating. And that's
Mm.
something we've had to sort of work with. But it's really, really hard. And the worst time is when you just finished a full day, you've given
Mm.
every last ounce, you finish at 6 o'clock, and you're like, I am done.
Mm.
And that's when I find it
Yeah.
hardest.
Yeah, it's a really delicate balance, and there does seem to be a lot of parents that put a lot of pressure on themselves to be this kind of orchestrating all the sort of activities and play, and also kind of being like clown, like playful. But sometimes we can step back, can't we, and just be that safe space, be that presence, be eating our dinner and observing what they're doing in the playhouse or whatever you were talking about, and um, pausing to, you were talking about pausing, and you're recognizing that she's frustrated and angry,
Yeah.
and then using a playful approach to help her to regulate again. And there are many ways of doing that. You're finding your flow, you're finding your way that works for you and your daughter, and other parents will do it completely differently, and that's okay. And I wish we would know that in ourselves so much earlier on as parents, because the pressure we put ourselves under at times is remarkably high.
Yeah.
um, it sounds like you feel most connected to her when she's kind of she's smiling and playing, and you've got that lovely flow together. How about you and your partner? How do you cultivate times to build connection together?
A really interesting question. So my partner's a shift worker, which means that generally he's not around a huge amount because of the sleep schedule and everything else. So I single parent a lot of the time, but then obviously
Mm-hmm.
he is there as well when he can be. And we don't get as much time to play as I'd like. Sometimes it's orchestrated by me, and that doesn't always work for him. Like going bowling the other day as a family, really not up his alley, apparently. I had fun.
Boom,
She
not
had
up his
fun.
alley. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? You got that funny? Sorry, go on.
That was really good, actually. Well done. I totally missed my own genius there. um, and something like that, won't be for him. Whereas tickle time, but it will only be the two of them. And so
Mm,
I don't get involved in that, but then I switch it into something else. So we often sort of play more with her, but almost separately, but in the same room, if that makes sense. And then it's a case of actually finding time when we can just talk. And I
mm,
value just talk more than he does. He'd value more doing something whilst talking. So it's
mm.
trying to find that balance between what he likes and what I like. And we are quite different in our approach. Um,
Yeah.
but I do really enjoy that when we have that time, when he is around and we've got that time, especially during the day, which I love because I work from home. So we take moments when she's not around for us, and
Nice.
just being able to laugh about something. It really kind of, just that laughter together makes me go, oh yeah, it's like it's rekindling something that,
Mm.
every time we have this small laughter, it's like, it's lovely. It's a really nice feeling. But I do wish I had more time with him than I do. And that is a challenge in our house.
Bless you. Micro moments of connection, isn't it?
Yes.
Playful connection. Sounds really lovely.
Yeah.
That's
And I do
amazing.
love a cuddle. Cuddles are the
Oh
best.
yeah. Yeah, that's another way of connecting, isn't it? So
Yeah,
that's
one of my
amazing.
favorite ones is skin. So sometimes I need to connect so badly. I literally lift the front of his t-shirt, lift the front of mine, and connect our skin.
Oh, bless.
Which he laughs at me and thinks I'm a complete bonker, but I find it really fascinating. It
That's
works so quickly.
beautiful. I love that. That's so special. Oh my goodness. So, coming down to land, I always talk about the education system because I've come from it for many, many years and had the privilege of just hearing so many perspectives on this. But I really do believe that you've got one too, coming from your breathing training perspective. If you could wave a magic wand and bring something new into the education system or change something, what would that be?
Um, I think that we have to keep it simple and we have to keep it sort of easy for everybody to understand, the teachers and the kids. So I would bring in what I teach, which is the 3 spots of breathing. So I teach the N spot, which is for your tongue position to help your nose feel larger rather than it sort of falling into your throat.
Yeah.
I also teach the D spot, which is the diaphragm spot. So where you should feel the movement when you're breathing, in that sort of sun that was on my t-shirt. And also the R spots, which are the ribs moving, and how we should move the ribs when we're exercising and needing more air, but otherwise we
Mm,
should be able to pull into the D spot. So this is quite a simple concept that anybody can try. There can be little exercises, and in the book, for example, I put them at the back, so actually you can actually understand what it means and apply them with adults and children. So I'd love to see something as simple as that coming in. It's great that we're
beautiful.
doing yoga in schools. It's great that we're doing some breath, which might be not curriculum based, but it is getting into schools now, which is brilliant. But I'd
Mm,
like to see people being a bit more specific. And my concern is that people are so unaware of the sort of negative teaching they can be giving, and they're doing a lot of mouth breathing, which can be fun.
mm,
But
mm.
equally, you're not saying like this is a fun game, but normally we should see you with your mouth closed. There's a big difference. We're not having schools educating parents on this area as well. So it's not
Mm,
like we're sort of saying, well, actually, this will impact their sleep quality and this is
mm-hmm.
something to do. But to be honest, the scary thing for me is that even if we teach in schools, we still
Mm,
aren't actually set up as, from the NHS point of view, to actually help
mm.
children who are structurally unable to breathe properly. And this is
Yes,
my biggest concern at the moment, that if we are currently teaching correct tongue position, it would be definitely helping from a very
yes,
young age. So we should be doing this as early as possible.
yeah.
Because we're not, and if we did it too late, so they only learn it at age 11, their
Mm,
face might be so narrow that they can no longer fit the tongue up there anyway. And the only way to deal with
mm.
that is orthodontics,
Yeah.
which you would probably have to go privately if you want to get the full support before that age. And this is the problem that I'm facing is
Mm.
education is good, but we also need to educate the health system
Practitioners.
as well
Yes.
as the
Yeah.
education system. So it's a very difficult area for me right now, and I don't really know. I can only do my bit for now, and then I'm partnering with orthodontists and other people who can actually get their message out, and we're all supporting each other because you can't do it alone.
No, absolutely. It's like connecting the dots, isn't it? And working holistically and all levels. It's wonderful to hear that. And like, if people aren't buying your book after this podcast, I don't know why they wouldn't be, because it's just such a good tool. And it's non threatening as well, isn't it? Like you say, a big, thick book on it is maybe just not digestible enough in this busy world. And thank you for what you're doing in this area. You're just bringing so much life to it. It's refreshing, it's edgy. It's definitely resonated with me, and I know many other people who are following you on LinkedIn and stuff. So we'll make sure we put all the links on the podcast, and I'll make sure I post about this as much as I can. But is there anything that you'd like to sort of leave us with at the end of this podcast that maybe has resonated with you, to do with Pause, Play, Connect, or something that you would love people to make just that one change perhaps
Yeah,
today?
absolutely. So it's been a fun, so let's try it. So I just love everybody to know what the correct tongue position is. So you can do it yourself and you can teach your child. And it's as simple as saying N. So if you want to get it
Yes.
with me, we can say N.
And
And the N position is the tip of the
mm,
tongue in the roof of the mouth,
yeah.
just slightly behind the teeth, not on the teeth. Then when the N is in, imagine like a ski boot. So you put your toe in and then click your heel down and then you ski off. So this way we're putting the end spot up, bringing up the rest of the tongue to the roof of the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So you're creating a seal, and you could make this noise from it. So, like you used to play and when you're trying to be annoying in the back of the car on a on a ride. So when you know you're in that seal position, you just close your lips, relax your face, relax your neck, and notice how easy it feels to breathe. And this opens up the airway that we have got, but it also gets the tongue in the correct position to form the face correctly. And you're now in the correct position to swallow. We don't want the swallow going forwards. We want it staying in the end spot and going sideways and back. And so this is like just a little tiny thing we can learn. And then ideally want to put it back multiple times a day. There's a free video on the homepage of my Link Breathing website, which gives people the ability to learn the end spot and learn how to train it within about 3 days. And once you've done that, you can even play that with your kids and stuff as well. So you have visuals around the house, so you can actually do that.
That is wonderful. And actually, that reminds me of a question I was going to talk to you about. Mouth tape. Everyone used to be so scared of it. I've got some now. I've been using it, the cross ones, the one that looks like a crisscross.
That just close up the front of the mouth,
just
not
the front.
sides. Yeah.
Yeah, just the front. And it's like a game of where it ends up in the morning. Because, because what I found is like, it's not on my lips a lot of the time, and it's like in my hair, or it's like on the pillow, or it's like on my PJs or whatever. And I don't know whether you have that. Does your mouth tape stay on all night now because you've used it so much, or does it tend to slip off now and then?
So there's two things I say here. One, either it's just a really poor brand and it peels off by just wiping it by accident. So check that. If it doesn't do that, it's not about the brand of the stickiness.
Cool. Okay.
The most likely thing is that you still haven't retrained your breathing to the correct level to tolerate having it on in your sleep. So you will naturally take it off while you're asleep.
So I'm actually literally tearing it off.
Yeah, and loads of people do it. So when we have something called a carbon dioxide tolerance. So how much carbon dioxide can build up in our body before we kind of get a to breathe. And you know how you used to like go under a tunnel, we're talking about playing, to go under a tunnel, you like breathe in, breathe out, and then hold, and like you wait until you get the feeling you eventually have to breathe. But that kind of play of holding your breath. So when you try that, the shorter that is, the lower your tolerance is, and the more likely you are to reach it when you're blocked in one nostril and you've got mouth tape on. Whereas for me, I don't ever have to take my mouth tape off. I've literally never had to peel it off in the night because I can tolerate a single nostril, and then I can decongest and go back to sleep if I wake up needing it. But I will never need to do that. It just won't happen. So I would say this is probably the most likely scenario, and that you just need to train this tolerance and know that you're comfortable wearing it, and then you'll probably find that it stays on.
That's so cool. I will keep going. But it is rather fun. And my actual one of my daughters has started as well. She's got, her mouth is definitely being affected, and she's read James Nestor's book and all that kind of stuff. She's very into it, and it's very, very cool.
It's great. And if people do want to know more about the mouth tape because they're not sure, they've heard about it, they don't want to, I have a video on my website, so it's under linkbreathing.com/mouth-tape. So on there, it gives a video about the mouth tapes, of like what types there are. So ones that you can get cheap and cut up yourself, or ones that you have to buy that are expensive, and then the different reasons why you might not want to tape yet, because you might want to train something first, or that you're safe to do so. And it's not for everybody. It is fun if you try it in the day with your family and you're like, oh, who can keep it on, so you can make play elements. But children can be quite against it to start with. There's one called myotape that's on there for children that goes round the mouth, not across it, so they can vomit, for example, without having a problem. So children shouldn't be wearing across the mouth, ideally. They could if they're awake and they're with you and they're watching cartoons, but not if they're asleep. But it does just help to bring the mouth together. But they don't always love it, so sometimes you have to create playful ways to get them involved in this if you actually want to improve their sleep by making sure they're not mouth breathing or snoring as much.
Love that. There must be many, many ways that you can do that. And if people get stuck or need some advice on how to bring play into it, then definitely reach out to you. And really, I am excited, and it just feels such a privilege to to record this with you, and just congratulations on delivering such a great TED talk. We'll have to put that in the link too, because it was brilliant, and you've really, really been shining and pioneering this work. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you for all you do, bringing the
And
play into the world. We need it. I think of you often. I'm like, oh, she'd love this. Whenever I think of
oh,
play, I think of you, and I think that's lovely. To be so connected with something in someone's mind. It really
that's
shows that you're
amazing.
spreading the education enough, and that you're doing it in the right way.
Thank you so much. Yes, the next time we'll talk about orgasms.
Great.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm totally up for that. I'm a big
maybe
fan of them.
maybe we'll
Big
do that
fan.
off camera, because
Yeah.
this is something I've struggled with in my life. So it's a case of I think it's a case of go conversation, but maybe not one to be recorded.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having this conversation, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank
Take
you. You
care.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.